Hello, everyone. We are going to let everyone get situated here and get settled before we get started. I think we're waiting on a couple more board members. So just, check your sound and your video. We are going to record the meeting. So if you prefer for your face not to be shown, not many people will watch it, but if that's your preference, go ahead and keep your video off. Let's see here. I'm going to get us set up to stream to Facebook. Possibly. Okay, great. Well, we are streaming live to Facebook. Look at us go. And we have several things to get done today. So welcome everybody. We have a presentation here in just a few minutes from Southside Community Gardens. Before that, we're going to get some reports taken care of. And since we're short on board members here, they will probably go by quickly. And then after the presentation, we have some voting to take care of for new board members for 2023. We have some open positions, people rolling off, and looking to add a few more. So if you are a member of the Tarrant County Food Policy Council, you are eligible to vote today. If you're not sure, we can wait for Harrison here in a little bit and he can check the list for us. So we can go ahead and get started. Let me do a little check here on which board members are present so I know who to call on. It looks like we don't have a secretary or a treasurer just yet. Susie, do you have a past chair report for us?
Only to say that we have some great nominations for the board to either continue, rejoin, or join for the first time on our board this time. So we're looking forward to that.
Fantastic, thank you. Let's see, I don't see Catherine just yet for our vice chair report, and I don't have anything significant for a chair's report. Just looking forward to a good meeting here today. So that means we can move forward with our working group reports. And I believe Dave and Lauren, you have something prepared for us for community gardens and urban agriculture.
Yes. Lauren, do you want to share your slide or should I share mine or?
I'm happy to. I'll share that right now.
Okay. All right, so our next meeting, let me start with that, is Thursday, December 8th at 3. And I'll put that in the chat here too after I'm done giving you the update. The guest speaker for our last meeting was Jeff Goodry from Green Oak School in Arlington. And he talked about their school garden program. So they have programs for kids and adults with intellectual disabilities. And the goal is to help them become more self-sufficient, eat healthier, and maybe get a job, which I'll come to in a minute. So the produce grown in the garden is used in the culinary classes, and then the kids get to take some home too. They have culinary and horticultural classes for adults. The adults get to pick different tracks, and one of them is the horticulture and culinary track. They're calling that the Life Prep Gardens, and they have 21 students now. they partner with Brit, so the students work there, and then of course at the garden at Green Oaks, and they're looking for potential internship sites for these students. They come with a job instructor who helps out, with whoever is hosting, so whoever is hosting doesn't do all the work. But the idea is internships that may lead to some job opportunities. So if you know anyone who might be interested, you can let me know, and I'll be happy to put you in touch with Jeff. Update from Grow Southeast, some good news and some bad news. Good news first, a former intern at the Opals farm named Jamal Huckabee, he's now the farm manager for Tabor Farms. That is a paying job. So that is Ms. Opal's vision coming to life, training people how to do this work and then actually helping them find gainful employment. So that's pretty awesome. And Tabor has been selling at Cowtown Farmers Market. They've started a chicken coop. Black Wall Street Farm. So let me back up. Grow Southeast is an umbrella organization for a bunch of folks doing urban farming on the southeast side of Fort Worth, with the goal being to make healthy food more accessible in their area and also for people to have job opportunities. So let's see, Black Wall Street Farm needs help with a greenhouse, so they're working on that. Mind Your Garden, this is more good news. They've been working on an outdoor restroom for a long time. They're getting close to having that ready, which means they'll be able to host their healthy hour events on site, which they've been wanting to do for a long time now. The other good news is the Funky Town Mindful Market is happening at Texas Wesleyan the fourth Saturday of the month. And the next one is Saturday, October 22nd, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And a lot of these farms sell there. The bad news is Opal's farm got hit with a professional burglar on Monday, September 19th. Not just a burglar, but a team. They knew what they wanted. They got in, they took a bunch of pricey equipment. So we're keeping them in our thoughts. And that's a bummer for them, but the good news is they did get funding for a new cohort of interns. And so they're hoping to have 1 or 2 more interns coming up soon. Community garden update from Lauren. So Lauren, let me know if I screw this up, but there are 5 school gardens working with consultants for Head Start for Healthy Lifestyles. And they're using a nutrition curriculum from the USDA called Grow It, Try It, Like It. Metro Opportunity School has had their first community garden harvest, and Mansfield Mission Clinic is now growing produce in a healthcare space. So that's pretty exciting. And then the big news from us, for many years now, we've been wanting to do tours of local urban farms and community gardens, with the goal being partly to share really good best practices that particular sites have developed, and also to provide networking opportunities to connect everybody who's interested in growing local produce here. So we're going to keep these small, maybe 20 to 25, so nobody gets overwhelmed at the site and everybody can get to know each other, because networking's part of why we're doing it. Maybe a couple hours is kind of what we're thinking. And we do plan to charge a fee on a sliding scale. So if folks want to come, but they can't afford it, they can come. We're not going to turn anybody away, but we're thinking maybe $20 and split that. Half of it will go to the site, and thanks for them hosting the event. And then half of it will go to help fund another thing we've been wanting to do for a while, which is small grants. We're calling it the Good Grower Grant Program. To support produce and farming community gardens that are in line with the mission of our Food Policy Council. And first site tour, Becca Knutson, our chair, has kindly offered to open the doors of Hollow Trace Market Farm. And also hoping to have a cooking demo using seasonal produce from her farm, ideally hosted by somebody local. So we're working on that for the cooking demo. Potential dates, we're working on a couple, late October, maybe mid-November. So more news to come about that, and I will be quiet now.
All right, thanks so much, Dave and Lauren. Next, we have an update from the Children's Health Working Group. And I have the update, but I am not part of that group. So if somebody is part of that group that would like to give the update instead, I would certainly appreciate that. So let me pull it up here. And see if anybody would like to help me out with this one. They have been working on a project for some time now about changing the default beverage on children's meals menus at restaurants in Fort Worth. And I believe there's some talk about maybe starting with a smaller piece of that and having that as the end goal. Their last meeting was in August on the 17th, and their next meeting is next week on the 19th at 10:30 via Zoom. And if you would like to contact them or be part of that group, I know there's lots of good folks who participate in that working group. You could see the email address there at the bottom. Does anybody have anything else they want to add to that?
I can, Becca. So we last meeting really worked on creating, gathering content and how we wanted to frame out a web page or a page for the Tarrant County Food Policy Council website. So that was the bulk of the meeting, and we're moving that forward with the communications team. And from there, we're hoping to have the website have a comment box so we can start, pushing people to the website and getting comment and feedback from the community to see if they're in alignment with this or if this is really, we need to pivot again.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much. Next, we have food recovery, which I also have the slide, but luckily somebody is here to give the update for that one. So Sabrina, let me pull that up for you. I have to see if it'll let me switch tabs here. Y'all can see the food recovery working group slide. Okay, cool. Go ahead, Sabrina.
I can see it. Hi, everybody. My name is Sabrina Vidari, and the first bullet here is that I have come to be the new leadership, the board member for the new co-lead for this working group. Gina is rolling off, as I understand it, and so I will be that new co-lead. Our next meeting is actually going to be next Friday. It will be at TCU, but we also have a Zoom option, so please don't let the ability of getting there to stop you if you can join us by Zoom. We have quite a bit of reduced amount of people in this group since COVID, which is understanding. And we are coming back into making this new again and setting new goals to see where we want to go forward with this group. So it's a really exciting time to jump on. And I would encourage you to let everybody you know that may have an interest in this to start joining now, because if we can really get into what we want to do. Gina's email is here, and she will provide you with that Zoom link and everything. And if you choose to go in person, she gives you a parking permit too. So you don't have to park tons of far away on a campus. You get a little bit of a walk, but not much. And you don't have to pay for it. So that's a plus. That's all I got.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, if anybody is interested in being part of that group, y'all do kind of both ends of food recovery, right? Like keeping things out of the landfill, but also trying to feed, use the food that's still good to help feed those who need it.
Yes, that is what we're working on, and how we had projects before COVID that kind of fell apart. And so now we're trying to figure out what we want to pick back up and what we want to try a new direction on. So
awesome. Exciting. Good time to join and get in on some new ideas.
Thank you.
All right. For our policy working group, which is still fairly new and informal, Susie or Brenda, do you have an update for us on that, or any information on how people can participate if they're interested in more policy type of work?
I'm not sure we have an update. Brenda, I guess we need to get on that. Because it's Farm Bill. Farm Bill's coming up and the
Yes.
legislative session both are coming up.
Right. Can you guys hear me? Sorry,
Yes.
I'm on my phone. Yes, Susie's right. We haven't had a formal meeting, but we're looking for people. If they're interested in joining us, they can email me.
Fantastic. Yeah, if you can pop your email address in, or one of us can do it for you. That group plans to, keep us informed on different food policies that are happening at the state and the local level. And of course, if there's a project or an issue with a local food policy, that group is going to be very well informed and might be able to help make some connections and some progress on influencing policy. So it's a good group to be a part of. We're just working on getting that more formalized. All right, well, that is kind of the end of our updates here. We do have our guest presentation. Bradley, are you ready to present, or do you need a couple more minutes?
I'm sorry, I don't know why this happens to me, but my computer, when I try to turn the video on, it just says failed to start video. And sometimes when I'm in these Zoom meetings, it'll just randomly let me use my video. Sometimes it doesn't. I don't know what's going on, but I think I got onto my phone.
Okay.
Can y'all see me here?
Yes, we can see your face now, and it looks like your phone.
Okay, that's kind of weird for me. Maybe I'll just use this until I can see if my camera comes on my phone, and that'll help. All right. Why is it doing that?
Seems like it wants the sound from your computer and the video from your phone.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So right now it's the sound from my computer and my phone is muted. Are y'all having a hard time hearing me or anything?
No, you sound great.
No? Okay. All right, I guess I'll just keep this up until my phone, or until it allows me to. Try to find a place to put this thing.
Okay. And did you have a presentation you wanted to share, or are you mostly just speaking to us today?
Yeah, I'm just going to speak.
Okay.
I think you all had mentioned that I have till about 4:40. Is that right?
Yeah, 4:40 would be great to aim for so we can get our voting in. And I know there's a couple people in this group that know you a little bit better than I do. Brenda or Lauren, maybe? Would you like to introduce, or who would like to introduce our guest today?
Hi, I'm back.
Okay,
I
fantastic.
would love to introduce Bradley. So I have known Bradley for a few months now, but we both sit on the board for Southside Community Garden, and I know he'll talk about what he does on his 9 to 5, quote unquote, and also some of his expertise that lies in gardening, which I do not have, but he just sent us some pictures of beautiful purple sweet potatoes and all of these other great things that he's been harvesting. But Bradley is a wealth of knowledge, and we're so glad to have him on the board for Southside Community Garden. And he will talk to us about Southside Community Garden and its mission. And I hope you will also insert some of your knowledge on food apartheid, Bradley.
Right on. So good. Thank you very much for that, Brenda. I do happen to have gardens all over the Metroplex, and I've had students and family members kind of laugh at me to say, what are you doing driving all over the place, taking care of these gardens in Fort Worth and Arlington and Fort Worth and Irving, all these other areas. But I've come to be a very passionate gardener. I'll talk a little bit about that through my presentation briefly here about what we do here at Southside Community Garden. But yeah, I just harvested a few really big bags of purple potatoes for the first time. I had them growing since May. A student gave me some that I planted on our campus, and they're just now getting harvested. But anyway, okay, so you all can hear me well? Everything's good now? So I'm finally on the computer. This is weird. I've been in the process of transitioning. My son moved out to college, and now I'm turning his room into my office. So it's been kind of difficult, but it's weird how my computer just randomly decides to let my camera work after being in Zoom for a few minutes. But anyway, so let's get started. Please interrupt me if I end up taking too long. I'll try to keep my mind focused on 4:40 as the time to stop, but I have a tendency to kind of digress, but I'll try to make sure that doesn't happen. here. But please just shoot me a chat or something like that if I lose track and I'm getting a little behind. Basically, my goal today is to just answer or address, I guess, maybe 5 key questions, and I'll kind of give my understanding of what we are as Southside Community Garden through these questions, which basically is just number 1, who are we, right? What are we, who we are. Number 2, what do we do? Number 3, why do we do what we do? Number 4, why what we do needs to be done, I think. And number 5, how you can help further this mission that we have set out to accomplish. So we'll just start with the first one. You know, who are we? We are a nonprofit organization that officially goes by the name BAM 104, which basically stands for By Any Means 104, which is a focus on the zip code 76104, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, but a subset committee, if you will, or subset of that nonprofit organization is Southside Community Garden. It is our first initiative, our inaugural initiative as an organization. We have many wonderful professionals who work with us who want to expand that mission to a lot of other endeavors, but we have, for the past 2 years or so, been involved primarily with Southside Community Garden, which we have our hands full pretty much with this initiative that we have been doing, as I said, ever since Patrice Jones and Allison Pope met each other after the wake of the murder of Tatiana Jefferson by a Fort Worth police officer about a little over 2 years ago now. And so what we are basically is a really diverse, dedicated team of professionals who kind of share a passion for urban gardening, urban food production, as well as community healing projects, right? I have been a professor of history for about 11 years now. The vast majority of that time, I really wasn't involved in nonprofit work. I kind of felt like my teaching was activist enough. I didn't consider myself an activist. And then I got a year off of sabbatical in 2017, and I went to this National Memorial for Peace and Justice in Montgomery, Alabama, where I found out that this man by the name of Fred Rouse was lynched in Fort Worth in 1921. And I'd been teaching about racial terror violence for over a decade by then, and it just shocked me that I have a PhD. I know all of this stuff. I've been teaching about racial terror violence, and I didn't know that this happened in my own hometown. And so I helped create another nonprofit organization called Tarrant County Coalition for Peace and Justice. And through that work, with a good friend of mine, Adam McKinney, who's also a co-founder of that organization, was a professor at TCU. He introduced me to Patrice Jones. And because one of the things when we started TCCPJ was I was a strong advocate for wanting to create community gardens in these spaces of memorialization that we were beginning to implement as a nonprofit. And I was having some trouble getting people on board with that because we bought some land, you know, where Fred Rouse was lynched. It was in the middle of an industrial area, and they were like, "Is this really a good place to have gardens and things like that?" And so I think Adam knew my passion for gardening, which I had kind of got into with aquaponics also during that sabbatical, and I'd been messing around with for a while, and he sort of knew my passion for that and introduced me to Patrice Jones, and he was like, "Well, why don't you just go to one of these build days that they're having?" And I was like, okay. This was probably already into maybe it had about 20 builds so far. And I showed up to one of those builds, and the rest is history, so they say. I mean, I met Patrice, we hit it off. I loved the work she was doing. I was so passionate about it, and I just got more and more involved. I was just a volunteer for a very long, not just, but those are our most important people, I should say. I was a volunteer, like most of the members of Southside Community Garden, for a good while, but I started doing more, and then was invited to become a member of the board of directors, and I have been doing that ever since. It's probably been maybe 6 or 7 months now that I've been on the board of directors for BAM 104. So what do? Well, we build garden plots in people's homes who live in 76104. So far to this date, we've built 61 garden plots, 60 of which are raised garden beds. One of which is what we call a huggle culture box. If anyone's heard of this kind of new kind of content, I'm really big into like alternative forms of gardening. So hydroponics, aquaponics, and huggle culture are really cool stuff. And I had to convince the board to let us try a huggle culture box at one of our really good gardeners' homes who had already had a garden plot. And so we expanded it, and we all got there and we dug really deep and filled it up with all this great organic material, and his garden is just blowing up right now. It's so gorgeous. So we're hoping to have more of these huggle culture box implemented as we move along and further our mission, which again is just so far to build garden plots in people's homes, right? We got a big grant from the Blue Zones project where we built 10 of them in one day and planted 5 fruit trees at Morningside Middle School in Southside. 76104 is the zip code that we focus on because 76104 is a neighborhood that needs a little more help, which brings me into the third point. Why do we do what we do in this zip code? Well, 76104 is a zip code that has very little access to fresh produce. It is the zip code in the state of Texas that has the lowest life expectancy compared to the average of all other zip codes, but it's not just the lowest life expectancy, it's the lowest life expectancy by more than 15 years compared to all the others. And I've had some conversations with other board members. I think I'm not a big fan of just the specific zip code, because there are other areas in 76119 and 76105 that overlap. And I'm sort of doing some research now to show if you took 76104 and you took a few neighborhoods from 105 and 119, then you'd actually have an even lower life expectancy. So there are areas in this region that are suffering quite badly from what we, as Brenda had mentioned, refer to as food apartheid. We want to make this argument here that food desert is really not an accurate reflection of what's going on, right? I mean, a desert is a functioning ecosystem that has all kinds of stuff that helps it work and move and create life. We may not be able to see life there if we're not aware of it, but it has a function. It works together. Not only that, but one of the things I'm going to point out here is this notion of stigma and how we help improve this situation. And when we think of desert, like a food desert, really what the people who coined that term, who, by the way, don't come from the neighborhoods that they're referring to as deserts, what they really are trying to get at is this concept of like barren, waste, emptiness, that sends kind of subliminal messages about the people there. And if, I've done a lot of work, for example, my first book was on cannabis, and I talk about how there's like stigmas with the use of these words, right? And the way we describe the things we are talking about oftentimes reinforce negative perceptions of those things. And so if you grew up thinking about cannabis as something that came from India, that's sinister and something that Orientals use, and people in Europe think of it as sativa, as cultivated, as hemp for rope and industrial purposes, then you're going to start to like think about those people from India in certain ways based on the manner in which you see them using a plant that you've been taught is sinister. And I think that very much applies to what we're talking about here. If you're talking about this neighborhood in these sinister ways, and these barren wastelands and things like that, then you're going to sort of get lost and kind of see them in these negative ways. And we don't want to make that mistake. We want to refer to what's happening as food apartheid, because it's more of a deliberate attempt to establish a systemic form of a problem, right? It's a deliberate problem. Like South African apartheid was a deliberate attempt to deprive people of color there from participating in the body politic, right? And to end that required tremendous amount of effort. And so what we like to use this word food apartheid to help us understand what is deliberately going on in these neighborhoods, many of which in the 1940s and the 1950s were all white neighborhoods. In fact, my mother is a white woman who was born in Fort Worth before she was ostracized from her family for marrying an immigrant. She remembers telling me when she was in 5th grade, living on Veneta Street, which is in this neighborhood, and there were no people of color. She never met a Black person until she got into junior high. And you go into this neighborhood today, and the white population is down lower than 5%. And we see this as a deliberate attempt. In many of those books that you got in that bibliography that I shared with you, you get this idea of how businesses kind of come in, somebody moves into a neighborhood, you have this concept known as white flight, people begin to leave, and businesses pull out of the neighborhood, grocery stores specifically remove themselves, property value drastically decreases, they purchase these properties for real cheap, they hold on to them for decades and decades and decades before they eventually are able to gentrify the neighborhood and transform it into something entirely different, right? Maybe we see something like that happening in Panther Island, if you're aware of what sort of what's going on in Fort Worth. Something very similar. This is how food apartheid ends up happening. Food insecurity in many of these neighborhoods often come after what we refer to as redlining, which is something that I'm basically describing, right? There are these maps from the 20s and the 30s that government officials will sort of label neighborhoods as hazardous. Before we called them deserts, we called them hazard, and people would think scary things about them, which would make property values go down. Then they come in, swoop it up, and reshape it after all the damage has already been done to the people who are there. So this is a deliberate attempt, right? And this is why we need our work here, is to try to reverse this systemic nature of the problem that we are dealing with, right? But it's not just proximity to grocery stores that's the problem. It's the stigma. It's how we as a society have undervalued food labor. It's how we as a society have come to convince people of color that food labor is attached to enslavement, which is attached to inferiority, which is attached to all of these perceptions that white supremacy from the 1820s and the 1830s helped develop. And we still have a tremendous amount of the Black population that has this mindset that has come from this time. It was like, well, we don't want to get into farm work, that's slave work, or that's devalued work. And so this isn't just something that's about fixing grocery store problems. We also have to include history in this. The way we talk about enslaved people, the way we represent agency, the importance of agency, the importance of talking about the value of agricultural work, focusing on what enslaved people brought with them across the Atlantic and influenced slave masters, right? You think about something like rice, or you think about something like the fish pepper, which is the most delicious pepper around, that would not exist if it weren't for enslaved Africans who developed and cultivated and preserved those seeds, right? And so it's not just about putting a grocery store up in a poor neighborhood and thinking that's going to work, because research actually shows that that doesn't always work, because you have to get at the psyche, and you have to help influence people and have them reassert agency. And so what we're doing to combat this issue what needs to be done in a way is create access, but also highlight the value of the people in the neighborhoods. This is not a desert. Mr. Lou, who's got his hugelculture box, is an amazing gardener. And because there's not a grocery store over there, we talk about this neighborhood as if it's barren. Yet here this man is, where people are coming over, taking his produce. He's teaching people things. He is helping create something in this neighborhood that doesn't get quantified when we use these terms. Now, if we use terms like apartheid, now it's getting quantified. You know, we think of somebody like Nelson Mandela, who worked tirelessly to end apartheid. And we need to talk about these gardeners of ours who were building garden plots in their homes for free and helping work with them, as the way we talk about the Nelson Mandelas, the people who are at the front, who are revolutionizing access to food and educating people about growing food and getting people to see the value in your work and knowledge of land, right? And this is really what we are all about trying to do. Just reverse this undervalue that we have of food labor, trying to kind of get at the heart of some of the subsidies that the government provides to white farmers that Black farmers do not get, trying to help incentivize people to get excited about gardening, get excited about food production, and rely on those networks. When we go visit our gardeners, I'm not just educating these gardeners, they're educating me. We're having a conversation. We're learning from each other. Many of them are much better than I am. I'm not a trained biologist. I'm just someone who happens to like gardening. Some of these people got skills that they've been carrying around with them on a regular basis that haven't been valued. We want to learn from those skills. We have created a network of almost over 200 people now who are in the neighborhood, who are working in the neighborhood, who are engaging with the community members and inspiring them as they inspire us. And so, which leads me to the sort of last point is, how can you get involved? Well, you can get involved by, first off, taking to heart some of the things that I just mentioned here to you right now, not just turning off the camera being done and saying, oh, well, I enjoyed that talk, now I'm moving on to something else, but really let these ideas sink in and try to figure out what steps you can take to promote these types of ideas. What conversations can you have with people in your 9-to-5s or your network about some of these points that we're mentioning, or maybe reading some of those books on the bibliography that I sent, and getting some of those books and helping other people see some of those books, or maybe going to our website, which is just always miss this out. If you just Google Southside Community Garden, you'll find it. But I think it's southsidefw.org. If my mind is right. But I know if you Google Southside Community Garden, you'll find it, and you'll see a donate button. But it's not just about giving money. We have you can donate your time. We'd much rather have money from institutions who owe that money to the people who they've been putting in these apartheid situations, and have your work and have your labor and have your community, because it's not just about teaching food, it's also about building community. And that is very important. If you go to our website and you see some of the testimonials, like Mr. James, who was the next door neighbor of Tatiana Jefferson and is still traumatized by the events that occurred the night that she was killed while she was playing video games with her nephew in the confines of her home, and how her neighbors were unable to go see, and some of them went hours before they even knew what was going on. He talks about how therapeutic being in that garden is for him, how empowering it is, how when he couldn't sleep at night before he had his garden, he's able to feel better now. He talks about talking to his plants and things like this that we find just so wonderful and beautiful stories. And we got young kids too. We got, Aiden, for example, this young kid who never grew anything in his life before he started to have this garden, and he's next door neighbors to Mr. Pete, who's an expert gardener. And they're exchanging and working with each other and learning. And now Aiden, who's a high school kid, is going to like protests with us and making signs and and coming out and getting involved in ways that he never really got involved before. To understand that not only are you helping heal the community, but you're sort of healing yourself and the nation as well by focusing on these areas. And also to try to eliminate the stigmas, to don't be scared to go into a neighborhood that you've been told is scary or sinister because there are a lot of people of color there. And you know, this story of TCU students talking about Scary Berry when they go across a certain section and how worrisome they are. Go talk to people, engage with people. You'll realize that much of these fears come from stigmas that are oftentimes based off false assumptions. And if we break down these barriers, we begin to form bonds. And when we form bonds, we build community. And when we build community, we strengthen the resolve to eliminate a lot of these problems, right? And so that's what we're all about. We would love to have anyone who has skills, gardening skills. We need gardeners. We have garden partners, which we're hoping to get grants eventually to utilize and maybe even pay some of our community members who live in 76104 who become garden partners to do so. Right now, everyone who's a garden partner is a volunteer, but we partner each one of our home gardeners with a garden partner who comes and checks on them and checks them out and see how they're doing, see if they need any help. Maybe you can learn from them as well, right? And they go through a small little orientation and training that talks about a lot of these points that I'm rushing through to get into because I know I ran out of time. Sorry, but get involved in this way. Take our orientation. Reach out, help out. Invest your time. Is far more important than your money. You know, money has to help too. And if you have connections with people who have money, send them our way. We would love for some people to be more volunteers for board members. We need a lot of we need more board members of people who are really good at grant writing, who have networks. I mean, some of us are involved in this grant writing stuff right now, but we got jobs and we're really busy and it's difficult to do it all. And we only have 7 or 8 of us on the board right now. We could expand that and have more people to help us. We can get a lot more done. So sorry, I've already taken up too much time. So I'll just go ahead and stop there by thanking you for having me. And if you have any questions or whatever, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bradley. I think we do have time for a couple of questions. So if anyone has some, please jump in.
That's our shirt, by the way. We have a lot of merch too that you
Nice.
you can purchase online.
Very cool. That bibliography that you mentioned is in the chat. If anybody needs that, the Fighting for Food Justice is listed there. And Catherine and Brenda helped us out with the links for the website and social media. So y'all check them out, follow them on there, see what they're doing, get all the good info on how to participate. And if no one has any questions, I'm sure while we're doing some voting, we might have a little downtime for more chatting. Any questions before we move on? Bradley, thank you so much for spending your time with us today. It was great to hear from you. I know y'all have done some amazing work over the last 2 years, and it's been really exciting to see, you know, every new build and how many gardens y'all have put in and the impact of each garden. It's been amazing.
Right on. Thank you so much. I appreciate y'all having me. And like I said, anytime I get a chance to talk about Southside, I'm always on board. So whenever you need it, just let me know.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. All right, Susie, I'm going to turn it over to you so we can get this voting taken care of. So jump on in.
Okay.
I need me to leave now, right? Because you're doing voting. That's how it works, I believe.
You're welcome
You can
to
stay and
if
be
you
an
would like.
observer.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. All right. We have 4 open spots on the board that we're going to be voting for today. And I have a 1-page sheet with everybody's bios on it. And then we have a link to the survey, which you will vote through. Does everybody know whether or not let me put it this way. Is anybody concerned about whether they're a member or not? Or does everybody know their membership status? You can raise your hand or put it in the chat or something like that.
And I believe Harrison can maybe check that for us. Is that correct?
I can.
Okay, yeah, if y'all have a question on whether you're a member or not, you do need to be a member to vote for board positions. So if you have a question, you can message Harrison directly or just put it in the chat and we'll help you figure it out.
They delivered on Thursday last week, but I don't know for sure.
Can I ask a question?
Sorry.
For people that are not members, how, well, A, it's free, so please join us. And B, how long do they have to be members before being part of the voting?
I don't think we have a length of time before you can vote.
So in other words, if you're interested in being a member, please join us and talk to Harrison about becoming a member.
Right. Okay. Let me see if I can share my screen and get to the right documents. Can y'all see that?
Yes, I can see it, Susie.
Okay, I apologize that I can't get everybody quite on. Maybe that's close enough. These are the folks that we have nominated. We have Dave Aftendillian, who you might think has been on the board most recently, but he's actually just been doing his usual fantastic work with a community garden and urban agriculture working group. We've asked Dave to come back on the board. Harrison Gibson has been our secretary. He is staying on the board for another term, but not serving as secretary. So we need a secretary also. Whitney Berry would be a new board member, and as would Jared Williams. I've pulled information about them for you guys to peruse. I can also, I think, I am going to try. I apologize that I can't actually do two things at once. Okay, I can't do this. I should have done myself differently today. Becca, I'm going to send you this document. Can you put it in the chat?
Sure can.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I just noticed that I know Harrison. Nice to see you again. And if I'm not mistaken, David is married to Dr. Professor Dr. Rose. Is that correct? Yes, I it's been a while. I was a TA for her a while back, and I remember her telling me about both of us have.
I thought your name looked familiar. That is so funny.
That is right. That's right on. It's great seeing you again. That's awesome.
That's when
I
we
have
sing.
another
It's a small world.
interruption.
Go ahead.
I think Jared's on the call as well, and he's gonna be he's on the nominee list. But I also want to mention that he is also a very avid volunteer for Southside Community Garden, and we appreciate him. And he is also in one of our videos on social media.
Thanks, Brenda, for that plug. I'm always sweating at the community garden bill days.
One of the only politicians
I
I've ever
have to
liked to have
say,
conversations with, Jared, by the way.
Thank you
I
for
have
that.
to say, he also actually shows up and builds and digs in the dirt and gets sweaty with all of us, not just shows up for picture ops. So we really appreciate him.
Mad respect. I love Jared.
That's great. That's fantastic.
That document
right.
is in the chat now if y'all need to take a closer look. And Whitney Berry is here in the meeting with us today as well. I know I have not met her. If you want to jump on and say hi, Whitney, you're welcome to.
Yeah, let me make sure my video works. Hey everyone.
Hey.
Yeah, I work for Community Link. We're a food pantry in Saginaw. I'm really primarily the farmers market coordinator. So I run the Saginaw and the Lake Worth Farmers Market. We are at the very early stages of trying to get an educational farm, educational garden going, kind of our reason for being here. So all of the information that you guys shared, everything is very inspirational to get us going and kind of get grant writing started for that process.
Awesome. Thanks for jumping on to say hi.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. I am pasting in the link to vote. It's a really complicated form. Might take you all of less than a minute to do it. But again, we have Dave Aftendillian, Harrison Gibson, Whitney Berry, and Jared Williams are our 4 folks that have been nominated. And we are still looking for someone to serve as secretary and somebody to serve as treasurer, which is actually not a huge job for our organization, as it might be for another larger organization. So there's that in the favor of treasurer.
And we can vote for up to 4, Susie.
You can vote for up to 4.
Did we have anybody else who was rolling off besides those whose terms were ending or they had moved?
Not that I'm aware of. We have one person I have not heard back from, so that spot is just kind of in limbo at the moment. So we may need to fill that spot at a later date. We may not.
Okay.
Everybody who has a continuing term, who's not moving, has agreed to continue, except for, Brittany is the person I haven't talked to, but everybody else is continuing, which we're really excited about.
Awesome. And I see in the chat that Jared just kind of openly volunteered himself to help wherever it's needed.
He did.
So
I saw that
dangerous.
too. It's very dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. And we can figure those officer positions later.
Yeah, you might, Jared, you might.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, kind of while we're giving y'all a chance to vote, does anyone have any announcements or events coming up that you would like the group to know about or for us to share with our networks?
I actually have one that I'll share. We have Grow North Texas, which is the organization I'm executive director of, has a beginning farmer project starting, and our first webinar is going to be on November the 6th. No, I'm sorry, November the 15th. And it's called So You Think You Want to Farm. And it's for people who might be thinking about farming, might have started planning a farm. It's going to talk about the things that you need to think about, what kind of operation, all the regulations, all the other stuff that you need to be prepared for. So it's kind of a general overview, opportunity to ask questions of people who are farming and that kind of thing. So I can actually send out, I don't think we have our registration quite up yet, but that will be open soon.
What time will that be, Susie?
6 p.m.
Is
It
it
will be on Zoom. It's a virtual. Yeah, it's Zoom. And then we're working on another one for December that will talk about the NRCS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, has something called the Web Soil Survey, and it's a soil survey of the entire US. And you can zoom in and see what kind of soil you have on land you're either on or looking at if you're farming. Um, and so it's a fun tool to use. I figured out that where my house sits has silty clay up to 78 inches. They didn't go beyond that. So more than 6 feet down, it's still clay. Whereas my parents' house just a few miles away has limestone about 20 inches down.
Wow.
So you can really see the differences in our landscape that way, and all that kind of interesting stuff.
All right, Susie, where is that link? Or like, how do you get to that survey?
If you Google NRCS web soil survey, you can get there. And you kind of have to figure out how to use it, kind of have to either find some help online or play around until you figure it out.
Okay, any other announcements or events or things you need help with? Susie, will we have the results of the voting today, or will we be sending them out later?
We're just going with who's here today for voting? Okay.
Yeah.
We have 9 responses, and everyone had 100% approval. So I'd say that we call that a win and welcome those new board members.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, we are excited to have y'all as new board members. We are going to do our joint board meeting in, is it November? Yes, November, next month. So we'll make sure you're on the invitation list for that. So Dave, Jared, Whitney, and I am forgetting somebody. I'm so sorry. Harrison. That's why
you can't remember him, because he's usually there.
Harrison, I'm going to take you off the list and then put you back on the list. So we'll have a joint board meeting in November so we can transition any responsibilities. We can work out the officer situation and get everybody set up for success for 2023. And then Harrison, do you have a secretary's report for us?
Not too much to report, and you may have said all this earlier, but we'll have our next meeting virtually on December 1st, and we will send out a meeting reminder for that. So if you would like to be part of those email alerts, and if you're not, please drop your email in the chat or shoot an email to our Tarrant County Food Policy Council at gmail.com email, and we'll make sure that we get you subscribed and receiving those heads up, and also the recaps in case that you are not able to attend the meeting. We send a follow-up following each meeting, so you can have that handy as well in case you missed anything or needed to rewatch all the fun. But that's about it. Yeah, December 1st, 4 p.m. That will be the first Thursday of the month.
Fantastic. All right, y'all. Well, we're about at 5 o'clock. If anyone else has anything, now would be the time to jump in and make that announcement. Otherwise, what a fantastic meeting. Thank you, Bradley, again for presenting for us. It's always great to learn more.
Thank you so much. And David, please tell Sarah hi for me.
I will do that.
Awesome.
All right, y'all. Well, have a fantastic evening. Thank you for joining us today. And it sounds like we've got some exciting things in the works. So we will see you again soon.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, y'all.